Welcome to the next podcast from PM Powered. I'm Wanda Curlee, your authority on project, program, and portfolio management. Today we got a lot of good things going on in the world of project management, and I want to start it out with MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. This article by Singularity Hub says MIT is leading the pack with this cool new autonomous drone tech. And what they've done is they've been able to take a drone and actually be able to let it go through a crowded, complex environment and navigate it. So the drone is actually learning as it's going through its environment. So they kind of equated it to Star Wars going through a meteor field. So stay tuned. MIT is doing a lot of stuff in autonomous drone tech. If you're a project manager or are doing some of the development on this drone, I sure would like to have you on this podcast. Please contact me at wanda@pmpowered.com. So I'm constantly telling you that you need to make yourself uncomfortable or you need to look outside the box. And so here are 5 sci-fi books biotech geeks should read right now. And again, this is brought to you by Singularity Hub. And the first one is called Born by Jeff Vandermeer. And it says that Vandermeer actually blends the technology backdrop of science fiction with fantasy creatures in delightfully weird ways and wraps them all up in a fast-paced story with elements of mystery, action, and surrealism. So if you're into developing things that are forward-looking, you might want to think about reading this book. The next one is called Altered Carbon by Richard Morgan. And I have actually heard about this book and I thought about reading it myself. And it says that you might want to indulge in the original novel from 2002. Here, Richard Morgan's neo-noir cyberpunk detective story is set in the far future and explores timely themes of post-humanism beyond a whodunit sci-fi crossover. And again, sci-fi is that area where a lot of our technology comes from. Just think about Buck Rogers. He was landing on the moon in the 1950s, and I'm sure most of the rocket scientists that put us on the moon in 1969 had read Buck Rogers, and that was considered science fiction in the early 50s. The next one is Autonomous by Anna Lee Newitz, and she's the founding editor of science fiction and tech website IO9. Her debut novel, one of the strongest of last year, draws you in with an action-laden plot, yet strikes a balance with its complex and flawed creatures and the grim landscape of the devastation of humanity's autonomy. The next one is The Martian by Andy Weir. And he's a former computer engineer turned indie writer turned bestseller sci-fi author. Andy Weir tells the story of Mark Watney, a good-spirited NASA astronaut stranded alone on Mars. We quickly learn that Mark is made of the drive to make it home alive is his fuel. So he talks about his survival instincts and his knowledge of botany and mechanical engineering. And yes, there was a movie on it, The Martian. So it's a really good book. I would highly recommend it. The next one is Snow Crash by Neil Stevenson. Snow Crash is set in the future of mega city state the size of a dozen Manhattans, and it's burpclave inspired by suburbia's gated communities. Residents have become fully immersed in the permanent virtual reality scape. So if you're thinking about things like that and want to think out of the box, always read a good sci-fi movie. It'll make you think about what could be possible in the next 10 to 15 years. So what's the next thing we're going to talk about? This one has to do with airplanes. It's called Hybrid Electric Airlines Will Cut Emissions and Noise. And yes, they're actually doing airline engines that work on electric propulsion and will develop in the air as it did on the ground by initially using batteries to assist a fuel-burning generator. So this is being tested by Siemens electrical propulsion system, and they already have a small aircraft that's a hybrid, and they're looking to change maybe jet engines into doing something more robust and decrease the carbon footprint of jet engines. So what do we have next? My next one is IoT, and let me get to that because I have that in Adobe Acrobat. So here, IoT implementation in mind, 5 critical factors you must consider. So I talk about IoT quite a bit because to me IoT is here, it's here in the now. And this was actually written by Gartner, providing some information on it. So some of the 5 critical factors that you need to think about it. One is security. Can I say more than that? Security. We need to think about security in everything. If you don't have security built into your IoT, guess what will happen? I don't think I have to say anything more than unauthorized users, hackers, etc. Next one is data sensitivity. When it comes to handling data, one needs to be sensitive to its acquisition and usage. So be sensitive to data. And what just happened with GDPR and now e-privacy in Europe, I think we really need to be thinking about data sensitivity. Scalability, you want to make sure that your IoT, whatever it may be, can grow with the demands put on it. Next is intelligence capabilities. IoT implementation does not just mean connecting the devices and machines to the internet. Intelligence needs to be added to fully realize the true value of IoT. And there you go. And the last and not least is interoperability. Think about Google and Alexa and all of those items out there. Right now, they're not interoperable, but we as consumers are going to push that Alexa works with Google. That's just coming in the near future. And I can't understand why we wouldn't do it. So I see something happening in the future where there will be protocols written that we must adhere to so that you do have interoperability. So let's change a little bit of the flavor. This one is about robots. And again, I go back to Singularity Hub. And robots will be able to feel touch with this artificial nerve. So think about that. Robots right now are made of metal and circuit boards and everything, and maybe some plastics. But think about it. If the robot could feel what you're feeling, that would be astronomical. So what they've done is been able to put some nerve feelings into a robot. So it's a graduate student at Stanford. Kim had been working with an international team of neuroengineers on a crazy project, an artificial nerve that acts like the real thing. Like sensory neurons embedded in our skin, the device, which kind of looks like a bendy Band-Aid, detects touch, processes the information, and sends it off to other nerves. Can you imagine what that will do for those of us that might have nerve damage? While it's being used for robots, to me, it seems like that's the next step to being able to maybe stop paralysis, maybe bring paralysis, make it something that is no longer here with us. So quadriplegics and paraplegics will now be able to walk again. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Again, this is the next step to what we might be able to do for our own bodies. If you are working on this, I sure would like to hear from you because that would be a wonderful podcast. Again, send me an email at wanda@pmpower.com. So 5 reasons car companies are betting big on energy storage. As we're seeing, there's more and more car companies that are putting out hybrids. And I think it's coming that all of our cars are going to be being run on batteries because it's just what we need to do for the environment. And as battery technology becomes better, then cars will be able to go longer distances on a battery. So it says here, an increasing number of major car manufacturers are developing solutions in a space that at first glance may seem like a strange choice. Energy storage, again, batteries. BMW recently signed a contract that adds 500 of its i3 battery packs to the UK national energy grid. Audi is running a pilot project. Renault is turning some of its Zoe batteries into home energy storage. And in Japan, both Toyota and Nissan have announced that they will offer battery energy storage. So can you imagine that you can have battery storage in your house and it also runs your car? Wouldn't that be great, especially in times where we have storms that knock out the electrical grid? If we had these energy storages, that would be wonderful. Again, thinking ahead, thinking to the future, thinking outside the box. These companies were developing these energy storage units for their cars, but somebody in the company had the wherewithal to think outside of the box and say, hey, we can use it for this or for that. So let me change a little bit here. I wanted to read to you a little bit of what's going on in the world of PMI. So what are some of the things that are happening? On 22 June, there's PMI China is having a China PMO symposium. So if you're in China, you may want to attend that. 22 to 23 June, PMI Turkey is having their PMI Summit, the Project Management Summit at 2018 Ankara. In September, PMI chapter in Africa, they're having the 2018 PMI Africa Conference, and that's from 9 to 11 September. The PMI Global Conference is happening in Los Angeles, California in October from 6 to 8 October. The PMO Symposium 2018 is happening in Washington, D.C. from 11 to 14 November. Also going on in November is the 2018 PMI MENA Conference from 3 to 4 November. It's in Kuwait City. And finally, on 12 November, the PMI German Chapters, PMI Southern Germany Chapters, are having their PM Summit, and it will be in Munich, Germany. Hopefully, this has brought you some ideas on what we can see in the areas of project management. I would love to hear from you. Please make sure you go to PM Current and subscribe to my YouTube, my LinkedIn, my Twitter, and my Facebook accounts. I would love to have you as a follower. Again, if you have anything that you would like me to talk about that I don't cover, or anything that you think that you could provide to this podcast, please contact me at Wanda@pmpower.com. I'd love to have you on my podcast to discuss something real quick. Again, I'll see you next Monday, and take care.